The Velrathi hunting grounds stretched endlessly beneath twin moons, a place where even the bravest sentient species feared to tread after dark. Here, among the crimson grasses and obsidian rock formations, the apex predators of Velrath Prime learned the ancient ways of the hunt. Here, Mira Solon found herself utterly, hopelessly lost. She had been part of the human xenobiology expedition for barely 3 weeks when her scanner malfunctioned, leading her deep into restricted territory. The other species in the Galactic Council had warned humanity repeatedly, avoid Velrath Prime. The inhabitants were too aggressive, too territorial, too dangerous for peaceful contact. But humans, as always, had smiled politely and done exactly what they wanted. Mira sat on a flat boulder, studying her broken equipment with more curiosity than concern. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of violet and amber. She should have been terrified. Any rational being would be. But Mira had grown up on the colony world of New Perth, where 6-legged spider crocs lurked in every waterhole and drop bears actually existed. Velrath Prime was dangerous, certainly, but she'd seen dangerous before. The rustling in the grass made her look up. 6 pairs of luminescent eyes stared at her from the shadows. Slowly, deliberately, 6 juvenile Velrathi emerged from cover. They were magnificent creatures, even in their youth bipedal predators standing nearly 7 feet tall, covered in sleek midnight scales that reflected starlight like oil on water. Their claws scraped against stone as they approached, and their mouths full of serrated teeth split into what could only be described as predatory grins. The boldest of them, a male with a distinctive white patch across his chest, stepped forward. This was Krek, though Mira wouldn't learn his name until much later. He opened his jaws wide, displaying 4 rows of teeth designed to tear through armor plating, and released a roar that would have sent most species running for their ships. Mira blinked. Then, to Krek's absolute bewilderment, she laughed. It wasn't nervous laughter or the sound of someone breaking under pressure. It was genuine, delighted laughter, the kind that crinkled the corners of her eyes and made her whole body shake with mirth. She wiped tears from her eyes and grinned at the young predators. "Oh, that's adorable," she said in Galactic Standard, knowing they likely understood at least some of it. "You're trying to be scary. That's so cute." The 6 cubs froze, their hunting formation dissolving into confusion. Krek's jaw remained hanging open, but now in shock rather than threat. No prey had ever reacted this way. No sentient being had ever called them cute before. Mira hopped down from her boulder and approached them with the kind of confidence that came from a species that had tamed worlds and stared down extinction multiple times throughout their history. "I'm Mira," she said, extending her hand in the universal human gesture of greeting. "I'm a bit lost, actually. Don't suppose any of you know where the research outpost is?" Krek's hunting pack looked at each other, then back at this strange, tiny creature who showed no fear. She barely reached their chest height, had no claws worth mentioning, no natural armor, no venomous fangs. By all rights, she should be prey, easy prey, but there was something in her eyes, something that every predator recognized on an instinctive level. This was not prey. This was something else entirely. Krek made a decision that would change everything. He lowered his head in a gesture of cautious respect and clicked out a response in Velrathi. One of his packmates, a female named Shira who had studied other species, translated. He says, "He will take you to the edge of the hunting grounds. But you must explain why you do not fear." As they walked through the darkening wilderness, Mira told them about Earth. She told them about humans who climbed mountains for fun, who dove into oceans despite not being able to breathe underwater, who kept predators as pets and called them good boys. She told them about persistence hunting, about how humans used to chase prey for days until the animal collapsed from exhaustion. She explained how humanity had conquered their homeworld not through strength or natural weapons, but through sheer, stubborn refusal to give up. The cubs listened, fascinated. Here was a species that was simultaneously the weakest and the strongest thing they'd ever encountered. Soft flesh that bruised easily, yet minds that refused to acknowledge impossibility. Bodies that could be broken, yet spirits that seemed utterly unbreakable. When they reached the boundary of the hunting grounds, Krek made a sound, a deep, resonant call that his pack echoed. It was a sound that marked territory, that declared protection, that announced to all predators in the area, "This one is under our guard." "Thank you," Mira said, genuine warmth in her voice. She reached out and, to the shock of every cub present, scratched Krek behind his auditory ridge. The young predator's eyes widened, then slowly closed in unexpected pleasure. None of his pack would ever let him forget this moment. "You're good kids," she said with a smile. "If you're ever near the outpost, come visit. I'll introduce you to something called chocolate chip cookies." That should have been the end of the story. But word spread quickly among the Velrothi youth about the human who laughed at death. When Mira's expedition camp was attacked by territorial adults weeks later, Velrothi, who saw all off-worlders as invaders, it was Krek and his pack who intervened. 6 juvenile predators stood between fully grown hunters and the human research team, refusing to back down. The adult Velrothi were stunned. Cubs never challenged their elders. Never. But Krek and his pack had learned something from Mira Solon that their traditional upbringing had never taught them. That strength wasn't just about fangs and claws. It was about standing your ground for what mattered. Even when the odds seemed impossible, the standoff ended without bloodshed. And by morning, the entire Velrothi Elder Council wanted to meet this human who had somehow earned the absolute loyalty of their youth with nothing but laughter and kindness. Years later, when humanity was formally welcomed into the greater Velrothi territories, the first species ever granted such an honor, Mira Solon walked through the gates, accompanied by 6 of the most formidable warriors in Velrothi history. They still called her Little Fearless in their native tongue. And sometimes, when no one else was watching, she would still scratch Krek behind his auditory ridge, and the mighty warrior would close his eyes in contentment, just like that cub who once tried so hard to be scary.